Hi everybody, I'm James and this is my Spitfire. In today's video we're looking at the problem I've got with how the body sits on the chassis of the car. So, here we go. So, the reason for this work, as it became apparent to me when I was doing some initial checks on the car and some manoeuvring checks, there is a patch here where the front wheel at left handle lock fouls on the body of the car. You can see there the paint's been scraped off by the wheel. So on further inspection, looking around the whole car, how the wheels and chassis align with the body, I found that overall the front of the body was sitting towards the right of the vehicle, and the back of the body was sitting towards the left of the vehicle. So it needs to be corrected to centre it by about 10 mil at all points in the extremities. With all the bolts undone, I've found that the brackets for the rear swing arms in here are rather stuck, so for now I have just on both sides undone one of the bolts on the swing arm, so there's no tension between the rear wheels and the body. I'll have to have a look at getting those off properly, because the shims that go in behind there, get in there, maybe on the other side you'll see, this is shimmed for the wheel alignment of the rear wheels. So I have to have a look at that. Obviously moving the body around will change that alignment. Have a look at that at a later time. So the next thing I needed to sort out, kind of obvious when you think about it, I had to disconnect the handbrake cable. Obviously at the back the handbrake's connected to the rear wheels, so the chassis, but the handle itself in the front of the cable is connected to the body in this car. So even with it off there's a bit of tension there, and that was not being very helpful when I was trying to shuffle the body around. So that is off now, freeing things up. So I've now got the body in the position I want it. I've ground out the front mounting points so the holes are a little bit wider and there's room to get the bolt into where it needs to go. And I've now screwed those down, or bolted them down as it were. I'm going around most of the bolts I'm reusing because they're the type with a nice pointed end, making it easier for locating things in this sort of arrangement. But I am replacing all the washers, so at least they're nice and new and shiny. I'm also throwing a bit of primer and rust converter around the place to make sure they last a bit longer. Once I get everything tightened down, I'll probably put a layer over the washers. You can see there the spacer underneath that goes in there. And this side is now screwed down too. Again, this one's been widened. If you look closely, you may just be able to make out, despite the shadow, past the shadow, that the edge of the original hole is off to the, you can just make it out past the washer. So I've moved that a decent amount away from the original position. That should help a lot with everything lining up again. Okay, with the front two bolts done up, holding the car in position, I'm now working my way backwards. So again, in the footwell position, the other two forwardmost bolts, I've had to grind out these holes a little bit, and these ones, because these go through to a nut on the other side, on the underside of the car, these bolts were quite well rusted, so I've replaced them entirely. It's new washers, bolts and nuts. So that's the top right there in the corner of the footwell, and the underside is here. This I've already covered with some primer to help protect it from rust. as we move our way towards the back of the car, we get to the centre spars, 4 bolts going into these. An interesting design feature on this car, you've got hard to see through the underseal, but this here is actually a little slide that the captive nuts are welded to, giving you some room to move things around, making the bolts easier to align. Rather useful little feature. I don't know if that's standard on these Spitfires / Herald chassis. Perhaps let me know in the comments if you have an idea. So now I just have the 4 bolts for the rear of the car to do up. I'll be leaving those brackets for the rear suspension undone for the moment till I get to sorting that out. As I said earlier, that will need an alignment and re-shimming. So these 4 bolts I've got in place, all lined up in the holes. Look over there and over there. So I'll just do those up, and that will be the body back on the chassis. Now the most important part of the job, the tidy up. Okay, now that everything's clean and protected, I can get on with the last piece of the job, which is putting the fuel tank back in. So I've cleaned out everything here, cleaned off that shelf. There was quite a bit of dirt and all sorts of crap there. So I've cleaned that out, sprayed everything that's exposed with some rust converter, and we're ready to go back in. Okay, so in order to get the fuel tank back in, we have the 2 bungs that came out covering the chassis bolts. I've got the old bolts that held it in. I'm going to reuse those for now because they fit. Someone's done some mangling of the captured nuts, so we'll reuse the same bolts that came out for now. But new flat washers and new spring washers to make sure that they stay in and don't go anywhere. I've also got felt pads to go under the tank. There's originally a strip of felt that goes and holds the tank up and stops it from making this line in the metal. So I'll put those on. And I also have a new bung for the fuel feeder line. The one that was here was very perished, so we'll put a new one in, and yeah, that'll get us where we need to be. Okay, with the filler neck installed and all the bolts done up, everything lined up, we're ready to put some fuel in and test it out. The only thing I haven't done is the fuel sender connection, because the old connectors were all stuffed and I can't find my spade connectors. So that's a job for another day. But let's see how we get on starting it up. Okay, well, unfortunately I didn't get the first start on camera after pulling it all to bits, but never mind. Unfortunately my overhead camera battery died. So to get the car started, things I needed to do: prime the fuel pump with this little lever here. That brought all the fuel through. I also went through and checked all the wires were connected properly and everything was safe and good. One thing I missed was the screen of brown wire here, which was sort of looked like it was connected but is not, so I'll have to re-terminate that. However, I was able to start the car without the alternator fully connected. It took quite a bit of cranking, but got there in the end. So much cranking and to the point that I actually stopped and checked the fuel was coming out the fuel pump. I Basically just disconnected the feed line here and put a rag by it and made sure it got wet when I turned the car over. I also checked the spark at the spark plugs, which there was. So almost at the point of giving up, I gave it a few more cranks. The battery was almost at the point of giving up, and it started. So that's it. Let's see if we can start it again. That's more what I'm used to. Runs quite well. Bit lumpy, but that's kind of normal for this engine. Right. Okay, well that's the job done. Next couple of videos I've got coming up, there's shopping I need to take you guys through. There's a diff to take out, the transmission to take out and fix that. And I need to do a video on the plan for what overall I'm thinking of doing with this vehicle. So subscribe, comment, like, all those things, ring the bell, etc, etc. It's all much appreciated as I get this channel started up. So I'm James, this is my Spitfire. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.